Greetings Internet! Today it is time for a long overdue update on my yearly themes. Quick recap for those of you now thinking, what on earth is a yearly theme? It's just kind of like, instead of having a goal or a resolution for the year, it's just like having this sort of idea that will guide and form your decisions throughout the year. If you're interested in a more detailed explanation than that, there will be a link to a playlist of my previous videos on the subject and CGP Gray's videos on the subject, links in all the places. Now, the last time I had talked about yearly themes, I had just started on my Year of Food, a theme which mostly just invited jokes about the name, because obviously you always need food, but the idea behind that was more about, cooking and nutrition, and I just wanted something fun that encompassed that and reminded me of that. Some of the goals for that theme I did actually achieve, and some of them I guess I really didn't. But of course the main problem with that theme was I started it 3 months before what would then become a global pandemic. And at that point, the themes just weren't in the mind. Everything just closed up and went into survival mode. And at this point, obviously, things are far from over, but it is time to start trying to think about what the future is going to look like. It's no particular secret. Anyone I've talked to about my work life in general will know that I am not particularly proud of some of the sectors I've ended up working in. Oil companies, affiliate marketing, forex and crypto. I've worked on what I think are some fairly interesting behind-the-scenes projects that do and automate all sorts of cool things, but then I'm never really particularly proud to show them off because of what they then end up getting used for. I end up sort of trying to distance myself from it and sort of saying that it's not my fault for any harm that's getting done from that, because I'm not actually doing it. I'm just providing the facility for others to do it, which is a very, not a very good distinction. So what's the solution to that? Well, obviously it's sort of diversify your income somehow so that can become a smaller and smaller chunk. Which is all good in theory, but then you have to move on to the obvious next question is, how do you do that? So I start by going right back to the beginning and thinking back to me as a kid and that traditional question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And for me, that I can remember, there were always two answers to that question. The first one, I don't remember quite how old I was, but it would have been pretty young at that point, and I have this oddly specific memory of wanting to be a truck driver, inspired by the character Long Distance Clara from the TV programme Pigeon Street.
If you lived in Pigeon Street, here are the people you could meet.
I probably only actually had that thought for like 5 minutes after the programme ended, but the fact that I had that thought has stayed in my memory for like 35 years. Of course, I have since learned that long-distance truck driving isn't probably quite as glamorous as a five-year-old might think it would be. And also, with type 1 diabetes, I'm not allowed to hold a HGV licence anyway. So what else is there? The second one, which probably came in the ages sort of 10 to 15, was, of course, game development. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, you kind of had to know at least some programming in order to even use a computer. And I was forever tinkering with that and really enjoyed that, and that's how that led me to a life of being a programmer. I took computer science at college and software engineering at university, specifically with that in mind. And to this day, some of my strongest and best memories are from those 2 years at college where I actually did game design. It was purely as a hobby, and it was only a small group of friends that ever saw them, really, until I put them online. But the fact that they are such strong memories, it's sometimes easy for me to forget that that was only really 2 years of my 43 years on this planet. And it was nearly 22 years ago at this point. Because after university, I ended up never really pursuing it very much. It was just, take whatever job you can get that will pay the bills. So what is the year of Bob? Given what I have just said, those of you who know who Bob is probably have already figured this out. The time has come for me to get back into indie game creation. And so while I did say that themes weren't exactly about goals, the idea of the Year of Bob is that by the end of 2022, I will have released at least one new game. And it feels like the time is right at this point. Like maybe say 10 years ago, the game industry had gotten like to the point where most games are all by these massive studios, and there wasn't really a lot of room for the solo developer at that point. But more recently, there's been a much bigger rise in independent developers and smaller teams. And while I don't expect and probably wouldn't want to get to the fame of something like a Stardew Valley, looking at some other people's numbers, gaining a small following and, managing a small Patreon is not out of the question. Now, the keen-eyed among you who follow me on Twitter will possibly realise that this has actually already started a few months ago, and basically I've just been procrastinating on making this video about it. I started learning Blender and created some nice 3D scenes as sort of concept art for one of the 3 game projects I'm currently thinking about, which would be the next instalment in the Bob's Adventures series, which the concept I have in mind is a sort of roguelike visual novel style adventure thing, which while I've got a lot of sort of concept art and notes and ideas for, I still haven't really started actual coding on the project. I've been tinkering a bit with Unity and learning how that works, but hopefully, making this video will give me that push I need to get going. And so yeah, that's what I have planned for this year. I guess follow on Twitter for probably the most recent updates on whatever's going on with games and releases, and check out slayweb.com if you want to have a look at my old games that I already made. And wish me luck, I guess. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again next time.